Hello, everyone. Today we will talk about a very important topic, which is related to the open work permit for family members of foreign workers. Just to give you context, so this means, like, for example, let's say you want to apply for postgraduate work permit and your spouse wants to apply for spousal open work permit. So, what are the new changes which came into effect on January 21st, 2025? So, we'll discuss all of that. Plus, we will also, if time permits, talk about the changes for the international students and their spouses open work permit who are eligible as well. So before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Sandhu. I'm a CICC licensed immigration consultant based out of Ontario, Canada. And here's the disclaimer. This is only for informational purposes. This video should not be construed as legal advice, and there's no intention of giving one. If you want one, you may book the consultation and look at the description. The information is there. So now let's look at the open work permit for family members of foreign workers. So this changes happened on January 21st, right? And we are only concerned about the open work permit eligibility for spouses of, let's say, postgraduate work permit holders or many other work permit holders, but not those who have already applied for permanent residence or who are already eligible for permanent residence. We're not talking about those. So earlier, what was happening is that they used to have these kind of categories. So you have family members of foreign nationals authorized to work in high skilled occupations. So that was under C41, C46 administrative code, and then even the spouses of foreign workers and even dependent children of foreign workers who are working low skilled occupation like tier 4 and tier 5 were also eligible under C47 for spouses, and for dependents such as, let's say, kids would be C48. But that has changed. So what is the main change? First of all, if you are a low skilled worker, then your family member is anyway not eligible for any open work permit. Neither your spouse nor your children are eligible. But if you are a high skilled worker, right? Let's say you apply for postgraduate work permit, you have a job in tier 0 or 1, or select tier 2 and tier 3. We will talk about which occupations are eligible. Then your spouse can be eligible to apply for open work permit. But since January 21st, 2025, that dependent children or their dependent children are no longer eligible. So which is the change? Previously, what was happening was even under C46, the dependents, not only the spouse, but the children were also eligible. So that is taken away right now. Okay. So now let's look at what is the requirement for the principal applicant. So now who is the principal applicant, right? So principal applicant here means, let's say the person who applies for postgraduate work permit, right? For example, just as an example. So that will be the principal applicant. And what is the spouse? So that spouse we are talking about is of a high skilled worker, basically of that postgraduate work permit holder. So what are the requirements? You must have a valid work permit, right? When I'm saying you, it means the postgraduate work permit holder, or they have authorization to work without a work permit, or an approval for work permit that hasn't been issued yet. Let's say at a port of entry letter, they have been issued. And the work permit or authorized work must be valid for 16 months after we receive the spouse common law open work permit. So this has again changed, right? So earlier what used to happen was the spouse was even eligible if the work permit was, I think, 6 months, right? It has to be valid only for 6 months. Look at this, right? But this has now changed to 16 months. So which means that anyone who has done a 1 year program and may be eligible for 1 year postgraduate work permit, their spouse would not be even eligible for this kind of a work permit, right? And then you should be living or plan to live in Canada while working, and you should be employed or will be employed either in tier 0 or 1. So there is no occupation list here. But if it is tier 2 or tier 3, they have a occupation list. So let's look at what is tier 2 occupations and which are tier 3 occupations which are eligible. Actually, there are a lot of these occupations. These are all tier 2 occupations like chemical technologies technicians, a lot of occupations in trade, and mechanical engineers. So those kind of occupations, you can see the list for yourself. Opticians, paramedical occupations, dentist, dental hygienist, and so on and so forth. And if you look at the high skilled occupation tier 3, you have dental assistants, you have even elementary and secondary school teachers, and you have nurse aides, you have painters, glaziers. So most of these trade occupations are eligible, right? So then the question comes, who are not eligible? So they have basically mentioned all those who have claimed a refugee, or they are under unenforceable removal order, or people who already holds a study permit, so those are not eligible. Or, for example, let's say your spouse has applied for postgraduate work permit, but you didn't apply at the same time. In that case, you cannot apply while the postgraduate work permit application of your spouse is in process. Why? Because either you apply at the same time, or you can apply if the postgraduate work permit application is already approved, and then you could apply. And then they're saying work permit extensions for your in Canada family members. The only conditions are that they are in Canada, right? So this is about the family members. Your family members in Canada can apply to extend their open work permit. So they are talking about, when they say talking about family member, they are talking about spouse of a, let's say, example, for our example is postgraduate work permit holder, their spouse. So the family member here means their spouse. Or others, it could be if they are in Canada and their work permit is valid for a shorter period of time than yours, and they apply to extend their work permit before the initial work permit expires, right? And they basically mentioned that they would not extend beyond the expiry of your work permit, means the principal foreign national's work permit, and your family member's passport or biometric validity. So they've given an example. For example, if your work permit, the principal applicant, the postgraduate work permit holder, let's say, is valid till March 27, your family member's work permit has a shorter validity because their passport is valid only till March 2026. Since we can't issue the work permit beyond the expiry of your family member's passport, they must apply for a new passport, not able to extend their work permit. So any other conditions are not acceptable for this kind of work permit, right? So even, for example, let's say you just can't say, you know what, oh, I want to apply for an open work permit based on my spouse postgraduate work permit. Earlier, I had an open work permit based on a study permit. No, they're not talking about that part. So that may not be eligible. You have to otherwise meet these requirements as such, right? Now, let's look into the other one, which is related to international students, right? So let's say your spouse is an international student and you want to apply for open work permit. So now the eligibility requirements are pretty clear. So either your spouse, who is the international student, must be studying in a master's degree program of 16 years or longer, or a doctoral program, or certain eligible programs. So they have mentioned certain eligible programs such as Francophone Mobility, and you can see the list here. I will put that in the description too. And or you study in one of the professional degree programs, right, which are like Doctor of Dental Surgery to Bachelor of Nursing. All of these list is mentioned here. And they've also told you how to apply, right? Sometimes to get the right checklist, you have to answer certain questions correctly. So they have mentioned what you need to answer to get to the right checklist, right? And if you're applying from outside Canada and if you're applying inside Canada, what answer you need to give. Then they have a very interesting thing related to even extending an open work permit, right? So your spouse or common law partner may be able to extend their existing open work permit under the stream if they meet the following requirements. So that they have a valid study permit, they're physically in Canada, will be physically in Canada while studying, and you are a full-time student enrolled in a postgraduate work permit eligible at a DLI, and you're not in the last term of your study program. So now, what does it mean? So it means that, for example, let's say you are in a 1-year program, and or maybe a 4 semester program, and you're in the last semester. Then they're saying your spouse cannot apply for their open work permit if you are in the last semester of your study program. So this is kind of added a lot of complexity and confusion here as well. But having said this, but nothing I would say from IRCs is not confusing, which is coming right now. There's lack of details, right? So that's what it is. And they also need to provide these kind of documents. So you need to provide proof that you're a full-time student, letter of enrollment transcript, and copy of your study permit. So these are some of the changes which has happened. And so I've created a lot of videos related to all topics on immigration and mostly related to the permanent residence, how you can get it. So please do subscribe to the channel, like this video, share, and that will means a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching.